The piano, from Anonymous. I'm a police officer in a large city. One night, my partner, who's also into the paranormal, and I were dispatched to a call for a break and enter. The owner had come home after being away for a few days and thought that someone had broken into their house. When we arrived, the owner told us they had come home and everything seemed to be fine until they sat at their piano to play and noticed that a few of the keys seemed to be off. They removed all of the items off the top of the lid and noticed that some of the hammers had been cut. The weird thing was that the wood holding the hammers had been cut far down past the strings and at a strange angle. The cabinet where all this was contained was really tight, and we could not think of a way to cut anything that cleanly and that far down without damaging anything else. Not only that, but there was a good layer of dust on the piano, so if someone had done it, they would have had to put everything back in exactly the right place, as the dust didn't show the slightest irregularity in the edges. There were no signs of forced entry to any of the doors or windows, and there was undisturbed snow all around the house. The only footprints were to the front door, and the lock and door were solid and intact. No one else had a key to the house, and nothing had been taken or moved. My partner, who's a music buff, started asking about the piano. It turned out it was an antique that the owner had picked up at a surprisingly low price. But then they started going on about how weird things had begun happening once they brought it home. By the time we were done talking, my partner had pretty much convinced the owner to have the piano exorcised. After we left, my partner and I had both commented there was just something about the piano. It held your attention as soon as you walked in the door, and we couldn't stop looking at it while we were there. We had to notify a supervisor about the call, but we didn't tell them that we thought there was an issue with the piano. On his own, he said it sounded like the owner had a ghost in their place. I have a few other stories, some work-related and some not, if you're interested. Keep up the good work. And thank you, Anonymous. I've replied separately, but yes, we're very interested. Any and all stories from your neck of the woods would be greatly appreciated. Again, I'm always fascinated by first responder stories, Paul, just because they deal with people at a level most of us don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they see more of the world than most of us.
Oh, absolutely. And they're usually on high alert and have to deal with some very challenging situations. So when they do encounter strange things, I do take them with a lot more veracity than perhaps some other witnesses, for whatever reason. Maybe that's some kind of bias. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I feel the same way. I will say, though, the whole thing about having the piano exercised, I just saw The Nun 2 the other night, and I really liked The Nun. I was a big fan of that movie. But The Nun 2, we won't spend too much time on it. I don't like to be negative. I liked the first half, we'll say. But it ends, as so many of these movies do, with a kind of exorcism. And I really just think we have hit the maximum in our culture for exorcist stories. Like, I don't think it's scary anymore. And I don't think there's enough collective belief in the power of exorcism to make that concept scary on screen. I feel like the only other way you can make that work is if you do, there was a film that was in development for a while called Exorcism at Crooked Lake. And the whole point of that was the exorcism is right at the beginning of the film, because the writer recognized that having that be the climax of your film, it's been done so many times that it has no punch. And so I'm not necessarily the first guy to go to exorcism as, this is what I think happens next. But so while I don't disagree with the partner in that such a thing might be necessary, I always think when I think like exorcism, I specifically think Catholic exorcism. And I feel like that's a little bit like, have you ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre when they try to get Grandpa to kill the teenager?
Yes.
And they just keep putting the hammer in his hand, and it just he keeps like flopping over and falling out. I feel like that's kind of the power of exorcism at this point.
They should always follow the solution that the Wim family of Hanley in London in the 60s dealt with their haunted piano.
I must know.
That's one of my favourite haunted piano stories was a young lady decided that she took a fancy to learning the piano. So her family decided to shop around in the local areas of London, looking for a good piano to get, and they stumbled across one in a music shop that was specialised in house clearances, and so they picked up this lovely piano, fetched it home for their daughter, and placed it in their back parlour. In the old days, it was just a normal terraced house. This is 1968, I think it was. So it's not, it's not a long time ago, really. And it's one of those where as soon as they got the piano in, strange things began to happen. Like the cooker kept turning on and people go, oh, who's done that? Oh, aren't we silly? The fire kept getting turned on. Oh, aren't we silly? Forgetting about that. They kept finding money in strange places, and items and decorations and things would be removed from the walls, and things were just being moved around, and it was just, oh, well, nothing's happening here. No. So they decided after a while that they were going to redecorate. So they moved the piano out the parlour and put it in the front room. At the same time, the family, apart from the son, decided that they were going to go away for the weekend. The son was staying there because I think he was about to join the army, so he couldn't go with them, I think, if I remember correctly. So he stayed the weekend on his own in their house, and he spent a sleepless 2 nights because on both nights a solitary note was repeatedly played on the piano on both nights.
Oh.
Just a ding, ding, throughout both nights. So he came back and he told his parents, and they went, yeah. Nothing's happening here. Anyway, stuff carried on. Fire kept being left on. Things kept moving about. No. Until the daughter, it kind of reached a crescendo where the daughter was attacked in bed by something grabbing hold of her throat and throttling her whilst the curtains billowed and everything. And the father, despite the fact that he'd spent 6 months saying there was absolutely nothing going on, dragged the piano into the back garden, chopped it up and set it on fire.
Now that's what I'm talking about. This is how you respond to paranormal activity. Ghosts only push us around because they think they can establish dominance.
But there's a epilogue to this.
Oh shit! Of course there is.
So they went to the shop afterwards and didn't sort of chastise this man. He said, why on earth have you sold us a satanic piano, man? What's wrong with you? We've got young children in the house. No, they simply inquired, where did this piano come from? And apparently it was from a local man who loved playing the piano, and he'd passed away. And so his sisters, I think they were, had taken ownership of the piano and had had it 3 weeks and gave it away. And as he bought it off them, one of the sisters turned to the other one and said, do you think this will be an end to all the trouble now?
Oh, son of a bitch.
That's the story of the haunted piano in Middlesex in the late 60s.
Well, Anonymous, should you ever meet this person again, tell them they got off lucky.
Yes, they didn't get throttled.
Also, I think the area I'm moving to is like Middlesex. The part of Ontario I'm moving to is called Middlesex, which is kind of fun.
It's a sign.
Telling you, gonna buy me a piano. Me and Jerry Lee Lewis without the cousin fucking stuff.
Yeah, if you move into Hanwell Street, you're in trouble, son.
Hamilton, actually.
Oh, it's quite close.
Oof. Yeah. Well, since we're here, I'll tell you about the other weird thing that happened. So we got back from Revelstoke on Monday, and again, long drive, whatever. So last night, it was Tuesday night. It was Tuesday night. We were laying on the couch watching, I think we were watching a movie. We were watching Strays, that adorable, incredibly profane movie about the talking dogs, which we both loved. We actually bought it as soon as it came out on video on demand because we just loved it. But we're sitting there watching this goofy movie, having a laugh. And Nick has, there's no way to sound this without it sounding silly. She has a rain stick. You know what a rain stick is? So it's some kind of indigenous art. I don't know specifically where. I want to say Australia, but I don't know. But it's
you mean like a wooden to bring on rains if they need them?
Maybe it's a big long wooden tube with beads in it, and you turn it, and it sounds like rain.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
The beads run from one end to the other, and it sounds like rain. It's quite a nice sound. So she loves that kind of stuff. So we have it, and we've had one for probably 10 years, and it's just leaned up against the wall in the hallway. And periodically, if there's like subtle vibration, one or two of the beads that's still left at the top will kind of tick down, and it'll be like sudden, but it's 1 or 2 beads, right? You think, okay, so a couple beads didn't make it all the way down the first time. That's not uncommon. So we're sitting there watching this movie, and all of a sudden, there's this rushing sound, and we can't figure out where it's coming from. And then we both realize it's the rain stick, but it's not 1 or 2 beads. It's like someone turned it upside down, and the entire contents were running from one side to the other. It took a while, and we looked at each other and said, what is happening? And we both identified it was a rain stick. We got up and looked at it. It was in exactly the same position it always had been, but we couldn't figure it out, because if things had been stuck in the top, I mean, they would have fallen out by now, right? And again, we've heard things fall out. It's usually like 1 or 2 beads, but this was like someone had freshly turned it over for a good 25 seconds. And I tried whapping it on the top of it just to see maybe we could reproduce it, maybe, So I flipped it over again, laid it down, and hit it on the top. And as soon as it had vacated all the beads from turning over, I could at most get 1 or 2 noises out of hitting it on the top. And I was starting to hit it pretty hard to see if I could make it make the noise. We never figured out why that was happening. We still have no idea why that was happening or how that happened, because it doesn't make any sense. Again, if you flip it over, the beads immediately fall to the bottom. Again, bar 1 or 2 that might get shaken loose if you're, depending on what angle it's at. But there's no way that it made as much sound as it did without being turned over, which it could not have been, because both cats were on the other side of the room. We were sitting stationary on the chair, and the stick is right next to a chime we have, like a long table chime. And so usually if I walk past the chime, or if anyone walks past the chime, it jingles just a little bit. So if there had been like significant movement, the chime would have jingled, but it didn't. So we have this mystery of the rain stick that we just cannot figure out. It was the weirdest goddamn thing.
And how long was this after you returned?
The next day, I think we got back Monday. I think it was Tuesday night this happened. Yeah, it was odd. And then actually another weird thing, and then we'll go to the next story. I signed up. I just bought my flight for Ontario, and I'd never flown with Flair Airlines before. They're a low cost carrier here in BC or in Canada. So I registered for an account, put in my name, all that jazz. And when the confirmation email came, it was addressed to Nicola, which is my wife's full name. I didn't put her name anywhere in the account. And when you log into the account, it's my name on everything. It's Brennan. So where the hell did Nicola come from?
Well, I had somebody send me a message about something similar to that the other day. That they'd bought a book about the Pascagoula incident secondhand, great condition. And when the book arrived, inside was a message to Paul.
No shit. Wow. What was the message?
Just to Paul. All the best.
Oh, just to Paul.
Philip.
Wow.
But I've not given that book up. But the chances of somebody listening to the show to then get the book to find it addressed to me.
Yeah.
Or to Paul, not, no guarantee.
To Paul, but regardless.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
They just thought they'd mention it. I just made me chuckle. Things like that make me laugh all the time.
It's a weird world, my friend.
It is.
Our only possible recourse is to be weirder still.
And long may it continue.